only on the backstretch are they going to have 5 and 6 wide, then trying to funnel down into a corner at 200 miles an hour. And if you've ever tried to get onto the turnpike, with a bunch of lanes trying to go through one toll booth, that people fight just to, at 5 miles an hour just to be the next one to grab a ticket from the toll booth. Well, these guys going 200 miles an hour, 6 wide down the backstretch, trying to funnel into 2 or 3 wide into a corner, that just isn't going to work. Not only that, if you're talking about the front stretch, they would do that going 4 and 5 wide to cross the finish line. And then when those cars that are below the yellow line were to transition back up onto the track, which they would have to do after the start-finish line, more than likely they would spin out and cause a humongous wreck after the finish that people could get hurt in. It's just a dangerous situation. So I understand why the rule's there. Good thing for Justin Haley is I remember a guy by the name of Brad Keselowski starting his NASCAR career much the same way at Talladega, where he crossed under that line, had some controversy around a great finish that he had, and he went on to do great things. So I think Justin Haley, for him, it still puts his name on the map. Unfortunately, he doesn't get the win, but I think he's an up-and-comer in this racing series.
Yeah, I agree. If you go back, one of the funniest people that you can follow if you're a NASCAR fan is NASCAR Chasm. He actually went back through and did a moments on Twitter and showed a lot of yellow line violations and some of the things that led up to it. One of the most famous was Jeff Gordon getting down under the yellow line and almost hitting Ricky Rudd's car that was at the time kind of out there just creeping around the track. He almost smoked him, probably going a good 75 miles an hour quicker than him at that time. Would have been a massive wreck. A lot of other big wrecks from guys blocking, getting put down in the grass, coming back up, causing wrecks. So, yes, by the letter of the law, the car's wheels did touch the line and he advanced his position. At that point, racing back to the checker, he couldn't give the position up to avoid the penalty like you can. But when guys like Brad Keselowski and some of the other guys, NASCAR drivers, have an issue with it where they're saying he was actually clear of the cars and had the lead before his cars touched the line, there is some of that gray area that maybe NASCAR needs to clean up. Maybe in their mind, it's another one of those things where NASCAR, it's clear to NASCAR, but it's not necessarily clear to the fans. I think that type of stuff hurts the sport. Maybe they need to come out and clarify that. They talked about, I saw Steve O'Donnell put on Twitter, he'd bring a rule book for Brad Keselowski. But for the fans, Eric, that are watching at home, if they don't understand the rules, you've got to figure out a way to explain it to them and make them realize what is going on and why it was in place. Because it's not that hard to get on YouTube and Twitter and go back through and see times where, well, this car touched it, got through, and this car got penalized back and forth. So, look, if NASCAR got put in a tough spot, you hate to see a young guy like Haley make a move like that. That would be another one of those moves we would see for a very long time on probably every Xfinity race commercial for the next decade get taken off the board. So that's the one disappointing side in that to me. So that'll finish up NASCAR here in Talkworthy. Let's kick it over to the World Cup. We're here on Tuesday night, so there's still some action going on that we're not 100% sure when the podcast comes out on Thursday of all the games that have taken place. But, Eric, just a quick recap right now on some of the things that have happened and really who is your favorite now to win the World Cup?
Yeah, it's been an exciting last week and a half since we last recorded. We know who the 8 teams were, the final 8. We saw France beat Uruguay 2-0, and that really told me that France was ready for a deep run into this World Cup. I actually liked how they had gotten through the group stages. They won games a lot of different ways. So France beating Uruguay and getting to that next round really solidified to me that they were a strong contender. Belgium beat Brazil, so Neymar, another big name in this World Cup, was eliminated by Belgium. Host Russia ended up losing to Croatia, but that happened on penalty kicks. So the game itself was tied 2-2 after full time and went to penalty kicks, and that was not the first time we've seen games decided by penalty kicks in this World Cup. So kind of an exciting way to finish, but if you're a fan of the Russia soccer team, not the outcome that you were looking for. The game that surprised me was England against Sweden. Sweden looked hot coming through this World Cup, and I thought that they were going to give England a very hard time. As it turns out, England beats them 2-0. So that put France against Belgium and Croatia against England in the semifinals of the World Cup. Now, as you said, we record right now here on Tuesday night. We know that earlier today, France beat Belgium 1-0. So France, sure enough, is in the World Cup final, putting Belgium in the consolation match. tomorrow, Croatia will play England at 2 o'clock Eastern Standard Time. That's the outcome that we don't have for you, that as you listen to this podcast on Thursday, you'll know that outcome. I, for one, will be rooting for England. I would love to see England against France in the World Cup final. That would put Belgium against Croatia if that happened in the consolation match. Those matches, Justin, will happen on Saturday and Sunday. So next week, we will wrap up World Cup soccer talk. We'll know who is the World Cup champion of 2018. And we hope to have a couple of listener interviews. My friend Pablo from Spain, my friend Craig from Leeds in England. Hopefully, we'll have some guys who really know World Cup soccer and European soccer to give us their reactions on how the World Cup ended up. But Justin, since France, we know, is in the final, and they will be playing either Croatia or England, France is going to take the whole thing.
All right, you heard it here. Eric's taking France. You don't really want my opinion. I don't really know much about soccer, so I'm looking forward to the potential interviews to learn a little more about soccer. But I'll watch the finals. I'll make sure that I'm home and have some time to watch those and try to be able to give a little better recap of the games and add more. But Eric, for me, it's still just, I haven't been grasped by soccer yet. It just hasn't. I think with the USA not in the mix, it's just really hurt wanting to watch these games, because I feel like in the grand scheme of things, from a U.S. perspective and a sports perspective nationally, in terms of what we cover here in the States, it just hasn't translated to me without USA soccer being involved in the tournament.
No, I think that's a fair statement. And the good news is we've got 4 years to prepare for the next time. And then in 2026, we're a host country, so we'll be in the 2026 World Cup, and then that'll give you a chance to root for the USA.
And aren't they going to 48 teams?
I don't know.
Or very soon in the future? I think they're expanding the field, so that's something we can talk to the guys about next week if we can put that interview together, is just how that's going to factor in. I know that I was reading up that they definitely are expanding the field. They're going to go with, I believe, 3 teams per group, where 2's going to come out, because there was some talk that that's really going to impact the group play. It's going to take some of the drama out that we talked about this year, where you have 4 teams and only the top 2 get in, where if you lose an early game, it does take a lot of that drama out if 2 of 3 get in versus 2 of 4. So that's some of the things that we can keep on the radar as the World Cup goes forward. And obviously, if the USA gets back in, the World Cup, as it was, we saw 4 years ago, becomes a much bigger story on the map here in the U.S. Eric, one last story that's starting to pick up some traction in the sport that does get the eyeballs in the U.S., and that's the National Football League. One of their star players in running back LeSean McCoy has got himself into a situation. Now, details are still coming out, but basically the storyline is that an ex-girlfriend of LeSean McCoy that lives in Georgia in a house that is owned by LeSean McCoy, that house is being termed as a targeted robbery, where she was actually beaten and jewelry was stolen out of the home. There's reports that that jewelry that was stolen out of the home was jewelry purchased for her by LeSean McCoy. And there's even talk that back about a year ago, McCoy had said he wanted to get that jewelry back. There was a situation last June when McCoy was at training camp that furniture was taken out of the house. They tried to change security codes. There was security cameras that were trying to be taken down. This is obviously an ugly situation anyways, before you even add in this whole robbery situation. There was an Instagram post where the victim's picture was put up. It is ugly. It's as bad visually as almost the Ray Rice situation, to see a female beaten that badly when you see her, sort of the before and after photos that are out there in some of the articles you can find if you just Google the incident. So, Eric, there's still a lot that's up in the air. But as you talk about in one of the points in the show opener, is how many times is Roger Goodell going to drop the ball in domestic violence? If we find out that LeSean McCoy had a hand in this, now he wasn't the person that broke into the home, but if he had someone he knows, or somehow he is linked to having that person go to the home and do this robbery or be part of it in any way, what is or what should the NFL reaction be to this outside of even the criminal justice system?
Yeah, I have a very strong reaction to it, and we'll leave the criminal side of it out because we don't know the final details, as you said. And so if it goes from being a criminal situation of LeSean actually doing the domestic violence, which it doesn't look like it is. It now looks like potentially he hired people to break in and do this violence. Yeah, that's a very serious crime. But the NFL, from their standpoint, it's got to be a lifetime ban. I think they need to stand up and say, we cannot handle situations like this from our players, and it's not going to ever, ever, ever be accepted. So, and honestly, Justin, if it turned out that, this story is developing like a movie, and so it's getting a little odd, and you hate to see that kind of thing. It's kind of blowing up like the Aaron Hernandez thing where you feel like it could be a Lifetime movie. But I think, based on the evidence that's out with the pictures and things that you're talking about, it's very gruesome. If it had turned out, let's say, that he had done that to her, it should be a lifetime ban. You can't accept domestic violence from your NFL players or really from anybody in society, but we're talking about the NFL. Roger Goodell has to now stand up and make a point. And if LeSean McCoy needs to be the example, so be it. Now, we've seen that Ray Rice has never played another down in the NFL, and that's not because he can't. It's because teams just won't employ him. And so that was kind of a first step to saying, from a team perspective, we're just not going to employ this guy. But from this, the NFL, from Roger Goodell, if there's any involvement proven by LeSean McCoy, it's lifetime ban. I mean, it's as simple as that. It's got to be a lifetime ban.
I agree. I hope that he is able to do that if he's involved. Now, there is a CBA that could potentially play into that with how the players union may have to protect him. But even if Goodell puts that out there and they have to try on terms of the players union just because of the way the CBA is written, then we've already seen that Colin Kaepernick has not gotten a chance. And look, we've been outspoken. You've talked about it. We don't agree with kneeling for the anthem. So that's a separate story. But the fact is, off of that, Colin Kaepernick has not been given another opportunity. Eric Reed is another guy that was kneeling for the anthem. He hasn't been re-signed yet either. So we've already seen these owners willing to take a stand and not sign players that they feel could potentially be trouble in the locker room. It has to be the same for LeSean McCoy then. Even if he is banned, say, 8 games if he's involved. If he's eligible to come back, no NFL team should touch him. That should just be the case. It should not matter that he's still a skilled player. Ray Rice is an easy guy to not touch because he was already dropping. His production was dropping. LeSean McCoy's been a very effective running back in the league still, even at his age today. But that shouldn't matter. If he's involved with this, if the league doesn't want a black eye for people kneeling for the anthem, they damn sure should want one for someone that's actually out literally giving black eyes to females or causing them to get hurt and nearly killed over an incident like this. So the NFL needs to come out. They need to make a big statement. If it's faulted because of just the legality of the situation in terms of the CBA, that just may be more of a union effect having to stand up for their players. Maybe they don't even want to, but then the owners need to do their job and just wipe their hands of this guy. You don't need that type of a player in the league. Again, we don't know if LeSean McCoy was involved or not, but there is a lot of circumstantial evidence lining up to say, okay, maybe this just wasn't coincidental that someone broke in and did all this. Maybe this goes a little deeper than that. But yeah, I agree 100%. The NFL, they need to come through and lay the hammer down and get this stuff done. There's too many incidents and situations that are out there of NFL players just acting like fools, and it needs to stop. There's enough guys that are sitting there waiting for their opportunity that have much cleaner histories and backgrounds that deserve a chance to be in the league, and not these guys that continue to piss their chances away by having these type of situations with the law and breaking the law and being abusive and having these types of domestic crimes. And even there's a Cowboys player involved in a road rage incident. A player like Alden Smith has been, every time you turn around, there's something else involving him, and he still somehow continues to get opportunities to stay in the league. Eric, at some point, all that has to stop. It should be a privilege to play in the NFL. It shouldn't just be, well, if you have talent, you can do what the hell ever you want. That has to fix itself, and this is an opportunity for the league to make a statement on that.
Well, and I got to tell you, it would be impressive to me if it does come down to a CBA issue and a players' union issue. It would be impressive to me if a lot of these players let's face it, there's a lot of good players in the league. And I'm not talking about football talent. I'm talking about, good people. They're not in trouble with the law. They don't have issues at home. They need to stand up and say, we'll fight on behalf of the CBA to make changes with the CBA. As players, we'll say, yeah, you can put in our collective bargaining agreement that we get a lifetime ban for domestic violence. That would speak volumes to the general public, and it would kind of really help the NFL have a different image if the players themselves said, sure, ban us for life if we're guilty of domestic violence. I think that would go a long way.
Yeah, I agree. 90+% of the league probably has no issues. It's that 3 to 5 to 7%